This warning from the CEO of the nation's largest automaker, General Motors, about the impact of the tariffs on the car industry.
We begin with a major decision by General Motors to cut jobs and close some of its plants.
Big news, General Motors is spending $4 billion to move car production from Mexico back to the U.S., and a big reason is tariffs put in place under President Trump.
In 2025, a 25% tariff on imported vehicles and auto parts has hit like a wrecking ball. The total damage, over $108 billion in projected losses across the auto sector in just 1 year. Nearly $42 billion of that is falling directly on Detroit's big three GM, Ford, and Stellantis. These companies aren't struggling because of weak demand or outdated products. They're bleeding cash because the rules of the game changed overnight. Every imported car now costs between $4,900 and $8,600 more to produce. For an industry built on efficiency and tight margins, that kind of inflation is fatal. It means higher prices for consumers, lower sales for dealerships, and thinner margins for automakers. And when the math stops working, the plants stop running. Across North America, the consequences are unfolding in silence. Factories are shutting down. Assembly lines are frozen. Thousands of workers have already been laid off, not because their jobs became obsolete, but because their jobs became too expensive to keep.
The battered automotive industry has been dealt another devastating blow. General Motors announcing this morning it's cutting a full shift.
Towns once powered by car manufacturing are watching tax revenue collapse, school budgets shrink, and local businesses die. This isn't a downturn. It's not part of some natural economic cycle. It's the direct result of a political decision. Tariffs meant to protect American jobs are now destroying them. And the industry that once defined America's economic power is being hollowed out one policy at a time. If this is what protection looks like, the price is far too high.
Over the next few weeks, car registration in Queensland will increase by almost 24%. That means on a typical four-cylinder car, registration will increase by $88 this year alone.
No sirens, no strikes, no headlines, just silence echoing across factory floors from Michigan to Minnesota, Windsor to Saltillo. It didn't begin with a loud protest. It began with a closed door and a canceled shift. Stellantis suspended 2 major assembly plants in North America, laying off 900 American workers almost overnight. But that was only the first crack. General Motors soon followed, warning shareholders it expects up to $5 billion in profit losses in 2025 due to tariffs on imported vehicles and components. It even pulled its full-year earnings forecast, an extraordinary move for the largest U.S. automaker. What's collapsing isn't consumer demand. It's the viability of the system itself. Factories that once ran 24/7 are now cold. Iron mines once deemed critical to national supply chains are idle. Warehouses that used to hum with logistics are now graveyards of missed potential. This isn't the result of automation or a fading industry. It's the blowback of a political decision. And the workers paying the price were told tariffs would protect them. Instead, they're now facing pink slips and frozen paychecks. The tragedy: these are not weak sectors. They were strong until policy turned them fragile. And the longer Washington defends the silence, the louder the discontent becomes. The silence didn't stop at the U.S. border. It spread. Stellantis didn't just idle American plants, it shut down key assembly lines in Windsor, Canada and Toluca, Mexico. Ford and GM, facing tariff hikes on cross-border parts, responded the only way they could by raising prices on Mexico-assembled vehicles. In Canada, steel and aluminum producers are already shedding jobs, around 300 in just 2 months after cost surges made by U.S. tariffs rippled back into their export contracts. But the damage is now continental. In Europe, Volvo announced the layoff of up to 800 workers, citing collapsing demand from U.S. buyers and rising component costs. Meanwhile, across Germany, France, and Italy, factories building critical auto parts have halted production not for lack of orders, but for lack of rare earth materials from China. As Beijing tightens export controls in retaliation, Europe's industrial arteries are choking. What was once a global value chain has become a geopolitical minefield, and it's no longer just a trade dispute. It's a breakdown of trust between governments, between suppliers, and between the systems that once kept prices low and factories running. This isn't protection, it's fragmentation. And every layoff abroad makes clear America's tariff war has gone global, and now the cracks are visible everywhere. For corporations, silence is no longer just the absence of noise, it's a financial strategy. Stellantis' CEO didn't mince words. Halting operations was unavoidable once the tariffs hit. It was blunt, but not surprising. General Motors quickly echoed that sentiment. Their CFO went further, warning that if the current tariff regime remains, GM may be forced to relocate production entirely out of the United States. But this isn't a future threat. It's already happening in real time. GM has paused its stock buyback program, frozen all new hiring initiatives, and is now diverting funds from planned expansions into retrofitting existing factories just to survive the volatility. This isn't restructuring, it's retrenchment. Not the bold push of a confident industrial superpower, but the quiet retreat of a company trying not to collapse under a policy wave it didn't choose. In the boardrooms, the mood has shifted from growth to survival. Internally, teams aren't debating innovation or EV rollouts. They're triaging which plants can stay open under current conditions and which can't. And that decision carries more weight than any press release. Because when the very companies that built the American middle class no longer feel safe investing at home, it sends a louder signal than any protest or headline. If the people who manufacture cars begin questioning whether it's still worth doing in America, the risk isn't just to today's supply chains, it's to the foundation of industrial America itself. The slowdown started with cars, but it didn't stop there. As automakers like Stellantis and GM cut production, the ripple effect tore through the industrial heart of North America. Steel mills, aluminum foundries, and metal fabricators once humming with 24/7 operations have gone eerily quiet. Warehouses in Minnesota and Ontario are now stacked with unsold material. No buyers, no shipments, no orders. Prices per vehicle have surged by $400 to $900 to $800-600 in just weeks. For businesses that rely on price stability like agricultural machinery dealers, this volatility is a nightmare. Farmers are delaying purchases, unsure if their tractors will cost 20% more by harvest season. Orders stall, inventories pile up, and production lines freeze in place. But the most chilling part, even highly skilled workers, welders, machinists, mechanical engineers are losing their jobs. These are the kinds of roles long considered recession-proof, protected by trade certifications and essential demand. Not anymore. This time they're not being replaced by robots or cheaper labor abroad. They're being sidelined by a policy shock tariffs that upended entire cost structures overnight. This isn't the natural rhythm of the free market. It's a top-down disruption triggered not by consumer trends or competitive failures, but by political decisions made thousands of miles away. When your work depends on a stable chain, and that chain breaks at the policy level, there's nothing left to build. And when welders go silent, it's not just a lost job. It's a lost signal that even the hardest skills in the economy are no longer a shield. It wasn't just factories that paused, it was faith. As America's big three automakers, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, cut forecasts, suspended buybacks, and warned of multi-billion-dollar hits from tariffs, something deeper began to unravel. Investors once confident in the U.S. as the cornerstone of global commerce started asking the one question no economy wants to hear. Can America still be trusted to play by its own rules? The answer wasn't given in speeches, it was shown in boardrooms. Multinational giants like Toyota, Honda, and Volkswagen didn't wait for clarity. They moved. Plants were quietly expanded in Eastern Europe. Assembly lines shifted toward Southeast Asia. New supply hubs were drafted not in Detroit, but in Bangkok, Krakow, and Sao Paulo. This wasn't expansion, it was insurance, a defensive rerouting of investment away from uncertainty. For decades, America's biggest economic advantage wasn't price, it was predictability. Trade deals lasted, institutions held firm, foreign capital knew what to expect. But now, with trade rules changing overnight and tariffs weaponized like sanctions, that predictability has been replaced by volatility. And volatility is toxic to capital. This shift has fractured more than contracts. It has shaken the entire psychological foundation of American business. CEOs no longer plan in years, they plan in election cycles. Risk officers once focused on labor or logistics now flag Washington as a primary threat. And for global investors, the message is increasingly clear: if even McDonald's, GM, and Ford can't navigate U.S. trade policy, what chance does anyone else have? Worse, this erosion of trust is invisible until it's not. There are no headlines when an investment is canceled, no ticker tape when a factory is built in Poland instead of Pennsylvania. But these decisions compound, quietly, relentlessly, and over time they do more damage than any one policy. Because when trust goes, business doesn't wait. It leaves, and once it's gone, it rarely comes back. This isn't a recession driven by weak demand or technological failure. It's a man-made breakdown. A policy war waged not with weapons, but with tariffs and the casualties. They're not just balance sheets or stock indexes. They're American factory workers, international investors, and the very global supply chains that once defined U.S. economic power. When factories shut down in silence, there's no alarm bell. But the damage is deafening. Paychecks vanish, small towns hollow out, and trust the invisible fuel of any economy evaporates. The question now isn't whether the pain is real, it's who's willing to keep paying the price. Are we witnessing the first signs of a new era? One where protectionist policies backfire, not protect, and more importantly, is the United States still a long-term bet, when its own policies are undercutting its strongest industries? Because if America's most iconic companies can't withstand the system designed to protect them, then what's left? Drop a comment. If you feel this shift and hit like plus, subscribe to stay ahead of what's coming next.